Okay. Yeah. So we currently in the month of Teves. And Teves is an interesting month because every month has something to work on in that month. It has a letter in the Hebrew alphabet that I guess according to the Kabbalists, when Hashem created the world, he used that letter as part of the creation of that month. So there's an identification of the month with a particular Hebrew letter, a particular Hebrew tribe, different ways that Hashem's name is configured for the energy to flow into the world during that month. So it's interesting that the quality, the emotion that we meant to work on during Teves is anger. And it's unexpected because a lot of the months are kind of a lot more positive emotions. And the Hebrew letter is ayin. So last week, Melissa was just talking about, we had a Verbringen, and I had been feeling a lot of angry feelings before I prepared for that class. And I started preparing for the class, and it said, this is the month we take the inspiration of Kislev and we go inward. And we meant to deal with things within and work on forgiveness. And if there's anger, somehow Teves is a month that brings up a lot of anger. And it just said there was just a little aside, and it said, generally, if people are angry that their needs haven't been fulfilled by other people, they might need to
wait,
take a look. Sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Jacob and Linda, they're trying to get in, but they're saying that the meeting's telling them that they need a passcode.
Oh, okay. So tell them that the passcode is 1234, and I will try to change it, because you know what? I put the passcode on for last time so that people at the Verbringen could join in, and I forgot that it was still passcoded. That's why there's nobody here.
Okay. Yes, I just told them.
Okay, passcode, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, passcode. Oh my gosh, that's why I forgot that, because I wanted you to be able to join the Zoom. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Okay, so let's see. We'll have people will start joining, and I'll remove the passcode for the future though. Yeah. Okay, there anyway. Okay. So I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there we have people joining in. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I put the passcode on because you either have to admit people by each person individually, or you use a passcode. So I took the passcode away and then I put it back, but I will take it away again. And I needed to find a passcode that was just numbers because people on the phone can't use the letters. Okay, anyway. So welcome to everyone. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I was wondering where everybody is. So I'm happy to see that you're here. So welcome. So I just started talking about the fact that we're in the month of Teves, and Teves is a month that we work on anger. And last week I was feeling that I was having a lot of issues related to anger. And then I saw this comment from Melinda Ribner that if we're angry, a lot of times the source of our anger is that other people aren't fulfilling our needs. And she's a psychotherapist, so she wrote, it's a good thing. A lot of people who feel angry with others that their needs aren't being fulfilled should learn to do better self-nurturing. And it might be hangovers from childhood wounding, and they should, focus on self-nurturing. And it was amazing. I just learned that piece of Torah and my whole mood changed around. It was like I shouldn't be angry at everybody, especially there was one person in particular that I was being angry with, and it was exactly that, and it kind of helped me to switch it around. But anyway, all of that was introduction to the fact that we are in the month of Teves, and we usually start and do some readings from Hayom Yom and focus on a particular day, reading from the Rebbe's comments day by day, something about Teves. So tonight actually is, tonight and tomorrow is going to be the 9th of Teves, and then Friday is going to be the 10th of Teves. The 10th of Teves is actually a fast day from sunrise to Shabbat. It's very complicated because usually on a Friday afternoon, it's even a mitzvah to taste the food of Shabbos. It's like it says, tasting the food of Shabbos is like experiencing the world to come before we in that realm. So we try to bring the goodness of Shabbos in ahead of time by eating the food of Shabbos. But Friday is a fast. So I think the fast begins at something like 5:45 in the morning. I don't know exactly. I can tell you again. I'll check. And then it's a fast all day until Shabbat, until we've lit candles. And then the fast, I think, ends at 5:07, something like that. So that's interesting to have a fast day before Shabbos. So to be cooking while you're fasting, then you light candles, and then the fast ends a little later than candle lighting, I guess after the stars come out. So why do we have a fast? We have a fast because in the time of the first Beit HaMikdash, this day, the 10th of Teves, commemorates when the Jerusalem was put under siege by Nebuchadnezzar, and this led to the destruction of the temple of Shlomo HaMelech and the eventual downfall of the kingdom of Judah and the exile of the people to Bavel. So of course, whenever we hear about the Beit HaMikdash, the Jewish people being exiled, you know, we can't relate to any of these things just as historical facts. There's always that teaching that's ever present. If the Beit HaMikdash has not been rebuilt in your time, it's as if the guilt is on you, that we are still contributing to whatever it is that led to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So now that not only are we living in exile, but we're actually in the midst of a war, and we're in the midst of a lot of stuff that is hitting a lot of triggers in us, persecution triggers, and being hated by the world triggers, and our light really not being respected triggers.
Being lied about triggers.
Say that.
Being lied about.
Yes, being lied about triggers, being misunderstood, the injustice against us, the fabrications of facts, et cetera, et cetera.
But isn't it kind of, normal to be really angry at that stuff, regardless of, nothing to do with childhood and whatnot?
Oh yeah, the childhood thing doesn't mean that that's the only time we feel anger. There's righteous anger. And
Yeah.
now what's going on is
Outrageous.
triggering, and it's not necessarily related to childhood traumas. It is related, though, to ancient dynamics and ancient stories of our identity and how it manifests in the world. And this isn't really the topic of the Shia, but when we think about the Jewish position in the world, why we came into the world, and what our role is in the world, and our role is to somehow be a light unto the nations and be a light and represent that light. I guess during the time on Friday that not only we fasting and we trying to, we remember the destruction of way back when the siege against Jerusalem was broken through. We have to also reflect on what is going on with us now, and how can we truly reveal our light individually as Jews in our world today, because each individual is part of a whole, and as a whole, our group, our nation, our tribe is sort of having a hard time right now. So I'm hoping that looking at the Parsha and looking at the events in the Parsha and looking at a specific, a couple specific parts of the Parsha is going to give us some advice in how to deal with the bigger question, which is how to hold on to our light and how to stand up to the darkness and how to bring our light out into the world, which is really more crucial now maybe than any other time that at least I've been alive for. So we're going to get to that in a minute. The Hayom Yom that I picked, the Hayom Yom for tonight, for actually today, I decided it's not as interesting as the one for a couple days ago, the 5th of Tavis and the 11th of Tavis. I want to do those two because I think they're both very instructive, although just so that you know, and I see Meryl's joined, so that's nice, and Karen's here, and Yakova and Linda. But so the 10th of Tavis, just so you know, the fast day's on Friday, but I'm going to read for the 5th and the 11th. So
And what time does it start again?
I think I have to check the calendar. I think like something like 5:45 because it's sun up, sunrise. Special.
Sun doesn't rise until 7.
No, the fast starts at yeah.
It really doesn't rise till 7 though.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to get my
Maybe
calendar. I'm getting the calendar so I can give you a direct instruction.
I think back then they didn't turn the clocks back.
No, I don't think they had that, Linda.
No, because it really doesn't come up till like 7 o'clock now.
You know what?
Which is really late.
There's a monthly calendar that has these rows of like different times. And there's like a time that is officially, here comes stuff with the calendar.
Okay,
Right.
the fast is going to start in Spring Valley or in our area 5:47, and it will end at 5:02. That's actually the timing for the Hudson Valley, which is Poughkeepsie. It's a little higher north. So I can be more specific to maybe a minute or two, but it's basically those times.
Okay.
And then, of course, on the 12th of Tavis, it's Karina's birthday.
Oh, Karina.
Okay. Okay, so let's get on with it. So the 5th of Tavis, when Mashiach comes, we will realize the greatness of hoda'ah, acknowledgement or belief, and tamimiyut, which is kind of a simple, naive, pureness, really, an earnestness. Everyone's pure faith in God and his Torah and his mitzvot. Talmud, and the steiging and the analysis and the details and the learning, human comprehension, even on its highest level, is limited. But hoda'ah, faith, is a feeling that is boundless. So this is the difference between like an intellectual way of grasping things with our mind, which is very important. The mind is very important, but the mind is limited. It's limited by our intelligence. And then there's something beyond the mind. And what's beyond the mind is faith and trust and this tamimiyut, this simple faith, this earnest faith. Hoda'ah, faith, is a feeling that is boundless. Mashiach will explain the magnificent achievement of tamimut, earnest avoda flowing from the heart. Now, I'm just going to explain this from a different angle. We had a yoga workshop here on Sunday, and my yoga teacher came. It was a master class. and she was explaining that in yoga terminology, there's something called Maya. Maya, and I love the way she explains it, is illusion, delusion, and confusion. That's when you try to get everything in your mind. But then there's awareness and there's consciousness and there's some other way of knowing things that is not necessarily brainy, because a lot of the brainy stuff is connected to ego. So this Hayom Yom is saying, plug into the fact that there's different ways of knowing things. There's knowing things in a brainy way, which is if I don't understand it, if it doesn't make sense to me, then I can't make room for it in my way of being. And then there's another level, which is I don't understand it, I don't get it, but I'm prepared to take a leap of faith and acknowledge that there's things going on in all of this reality that I don't understand. And it says Mashiach is going to come and explain to us how that is so important, that we can be in that place, that not everything has to be only what I can understand with my own brain and my own intellect. So that was the reading for the 5th. And I don't know, are there any comments or questions about that? Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to clarify, Hoda'a, because I'm hearing that there's the root das, like knowledge, but you said it as belief, right? So can you just
I'm not hearing your question.
what my question is?
Yeah, I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Yeah, you're not coming through. It's,
You know what? Because I forgot something. Okay, can you hear me now?
yes,
Now I
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. I had a microphone thingy. No, so you said the word Hoda'a, and you said it's belief, and I believe you. I hear the root Daya, like to know,
The root
like
of
das. I mean das to know.
the root of Hoda'ah is not belief. The root of Hoda'ah is acknowledgement, and it's connected to gratitude. It's from the midah or the sphere of Hod. Hod is acknowledgement that there's something bigger than me. Hod is acknowledging of others. That's what
So it has nothing to do with das.
No, nothing to do with that.
Okay, thank you. So it's a different word that we usually
It's
think of when we
connected
think
to
of belief.
It's
We usually think
connected
of
to Todah or Hoda'ah, acknowledgement, gratitude. Thank you.
Thank
That's the
you.
root of it.
Okay,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
mute you. I'm going to mute you because it's a little crackly. Helene.
So I also had a question related to the same thing because I saw the root as gratefulness, right?
Right.
I've also heard as chod translated as humility. And
Right.
yet, so the connection between that and having faith, which is emunah.
Right.
So so is it saying that humility and gratitude is the abundant, endless experience of faithfulness?
Kind of. It's like on the tree of life or the Sphirot, you have two opposite qualities. Netzach is my determination, my ambition, my perseverance, my endurance. Opposite to Netzach is Hod. Hod is when I surrender. I surrender for a lot of reasons. I surrender because there's something way bigger than me that I'm in awe of. Hod is sometimes translated as splendor, which I always figure like, how do you do splendor? But splendor means like, I'm in touch with the bigness of something so much bigger than me. I'm awed. I'm awed into humility. That humility makes me humble. That humbleness makes me grateful. That gratefulness makes me believe that there's a picture beyond that I don't get. And
Okay,
so
thank you.
that's how it feeds into faith.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
helpful. Thanks.
All right. Okay, there's one more Hayom Yom before we get into the Parsha. And Susan's not here because she said, I miss when you don't do the Hayom Yom. And now She's not here, but hopefully she'll listen to the recording. So
Well,
the
she-
next one is so beautiful, and hopefully we can get through it quickly. It's talking about Torah Feng Shui. And I love this Torah Feng Shui because Feng Shui is like a system of energy alignment, and the way to organize space. Is it Chinese, Japanese? Who knows? Feng Shui, is it? It's
Chinese.
Chinese. So Jewish Feng Shui isn't that you need a red string here and a pot plant there and your window facing this way. This is Jewish Feng Shui. Listen to this. Man's life is dependent on the air around him. Without air, he cannot live, and the quality of life is dependent on the quality of air. In an atmosphere of Torah and mitzvot, there is healthy air. In a godless environment, life is diseased and one is constantly threatened with the possibility of being stricken with contagious maladies. Now listen to this, how you stay healthy. The first general step in healing is to purify the atmosphere. Purification of the air is the task of every person familiar with Torah and Torah literature. Now listen to this. This is the fun part. And is effected through the letters of Torah. When reciting words of Torah while in the store or walking in the street or riding the subway, one cleans the air. Everyone knowledgeable in Torah must have some Torah memorized, Chumash, Tehillim, Mishnah, Tanya, etc., so that at all times and in all places he will be able to think and utter holy words of Torah. So really, if you think about it, it's a very cool idea that if you want to change the energy in your home, in your room, in your environment, speak words of Torah and you'll up the energy. You will raise the vibration. You will purify the air. So I thought that was too cool to miss. So I wanted to do 2 Hayom Yoms. Okay, I don't think there needs to be so many questions on that. It's kind of self-evident. But our life is energy, right? And the kind of energy that we emit into the world, whether it's our emotions, our words, our feelings, they making an impact in the world. So the words of Torah and the words of tefillah, our prayers, actually changing and purifying the atmosphere. I thought that was very cool. Okay, so we're moving into the parsha now, and I'm going to actually share the screen so that we can follow our parsha inside. And we're going to show Rashi's commentary. Okay, so just let's just stop the share for a minute and recap the story where we're up to for people who don't know. So Yosef was sold into slavery, went into Potiphar's home, was framed by Mrs. Potiphar because she wanted to sleep with him and he said no. Then she grabbed his garment. He got framed that he abused or accosted her. He was thrown into jail for 12 years. After 10 years, the butler and the baker had a dream. Yosef paid attention to them, that they were looking a little discomforted. He said, guys, what's the matter? You look upset. They each told him that they had a dream and they didn't know the meaning of the dream. Joseph correctly interpreted both dreams and said to the wine steward, you are going to be freed. And when you're free, please tell someone in power that there's this Jewish guy in jail and I was framed, and help me get out of here. So Hashem punished Yosef for that. He said, you are a smart guy, Yosef. You are plugged into Hashgacha Pratis. You know that from the minute you were in jail, the minute that you were in Potiphar's house, you rose to the top and you were in charge of everything going on in Potiphar's house. Even though you were framed, you had it very good in Potiphar's house. You were treated very well. Then you were sent to jail. And even though you were in jail, you were treated pretty well in jail. And you were actually in charge of all the prisoners. You should have known that Hashem was with you, and you don't need to ask favors of any old stupid butlers or bakers or Pharaoh's workermen or political people in the court. You should have trusted in me. And Yosef was told to, was, as a consequence of him asking someone, it's like a cheap trick, you know, when you're connected to the king, you don't have to ask for favors from, you know, orderlies. So he got 2 more years in jail, and then Pharaoh had 2 dreams and he couldn't interpret them. And then the butler did in fact remember Yosef, and he brought him out, and Yosef had a haircut and he changed his clothes and he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams correctly, and 7 years of bounty and then 7 years of famine. And Yosef is put in charge, and Yosef is cooking up a plan to get his brothers to come into Egypt. We didn't have a Parsha class last week. Everything Yosef did, that anyone who comes to get grain has to sign in at one of the gates to Mitzrayim, Egypt, has to say who they are, the name of their family, where they're coming from. It's all part of a plan that Yosef has to get his brothers in front of him. There's a rule that if you want to get grain from Egypt, you have to come yourself. You can't send your servants. So Yosef is orchestrating all these rules so that when his brothers come to get grain, he'll know about it and he'll be able to bring them right in front of him. What happens? The brothers come, and the brothers there's 10 brothers, and they don't enter Mitzrayim all together. They split up and they enter through different gates. And Yosef knows about this, and it gives him a good excuse. And he brings them all into his court, and he says, maybe you guys are spies. I have to interrogate you, and I have to find out who you are. And he talks to them and he says, well, tell me, you know, do you have family back home? They say, yes, we have a father. Yosef is, oh, is your father alive? Yes, our father's alive. And do you have any other family? Well, we have a younger brother who's left behind, but we had 2 brothers, but one of our brothers got lost, but we won't go into that now. And Yosef is like, very interesting. And then Yosef has a plan, and he sends all the brothers back with money in their bags. But he says, sorry, I made it too quick. He says, okay, that's fine. I'm not sure if you're spies or you're not. And you mentioned that you have another brother back home. So you got money, you got grain for now. But if you want to come back and get more grain, you're going to have to bring me that younger brother of yours. And by the way, I'm going to hold on to one of you, and I'm going to keep him as collateral. And he takes Shimon, because Shimon was the one who was the most aggressive against him. And he says, I'm going to keep this brother, and don't even think about coming back to Egypt to get more grain unless you bring me your younger brother. So this is a big test for the brothers, because they already know that their father's suffering a great deal since Yosef was sold, lost. They told their father he was killed, but they all know he wasn't killed. And they go back to their father, and they use up the grain. And at a certain point, the father says, you need to go back to Egypt to get more grain. And the brothers say, well, Tati, he's not going to give us more grain unless we take Binyamin with us. And then the father says, well, that's not a good idea. I mean, I already lost Yosef. I'm not going to send Binyamin now. And they kind of wait a little longer, but there's a famine. They wait a little longer. And then they say, but look, and never mind that Shimon is in jail over there. Then they say, we got to go back to Egypt. We got to get more grain. And they say, no, you can't go back unless we have Binyamin. So Reuven says to his father, I'll take responsibility for Benjamin, if he keeps Benjamin or he does anything to Benjamin, you can kill my kids. I think he says 2 of my kids. So Yehuda's like, Yaakov is like, well, that's not a great plan. I mean, then I'm going to lose Benjamin and some of my grandsons. I mean, that's not a good plan. I'm not really comforted by that plan. And then Yehuda says, I will take responsibility for bringing Benjamin back. And if I don't bring Benjamin back, I will owe you my life in this world and the next world. I'm fully taking responsibility that I will make sure that I bring Benjamin back to you. And that's where we're up to in the Parsha right now. Actually, I think that's not where we're up to. That's where we're up to in the Parsha. But Yosef does more things with the brothers. The first time they come, he puts their money back in their bag, so they go home and they find their money and they're not sure. And then now, what happened before this is that they got their grain, they brought Binyamin, he gave them a beautiful dinner. He sat them in their age ranges, which was interesting. How did he know who was oldest, who was youngest? And then when they were on their way home, he put his wine glass, apparently his magic goblet for divining, his divining goblet, into Benjamin's sack. And then he tells his own men to chase after them and say, someone's stolen from Yosef. And they say, we would never do such a thing. And then they look and they find that it's the goblet of Yosef is in Benjamin's sack. So he was framed, but now the family have a big trouble. What are they going to do? How are they going to get Benjamin out of trouble? So this is where we kind of pick up the Parsha. So that's the backstory. And it's very interesting because if you think about it in terms of current events as well, we've got the Jewish tribe facing up to the powerful, supposedly Egyptian power person who's got the money, got the food, got all the authority behind him. And here's this Jewish tribe, and now they've been accused that Benjamin's actually stolen. Maybe he really did steal. No one really knows that he didn't. Only Yosef knows that Benjamin is completely innocent. Everybody else maybe not so sure. So let's come into the Parsha.
Can I just say thank you? That was like a really, really good recap. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Very, very appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. So we start off, and it's Vayeshev. So where are we? We're not Vayeshev. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, Vayigash. Okay. So I've got the right place on the screen here. So Vayigash Elav Yehuda, and he approached to him, Yehuda, Vayome Bi Adoni Yedaber na avdecha dava beoznai Adoni ve'al yacha apecha ba'avdecha ki kamocha kaparo. So Yehuda comes up to, this is a very dramatic moment of a confrontation between Yehuda, who's representing, let's say, the family now. His name is Yehuda. He's like the spokesperson for this tribe, this Jewish tribe that's headed by Yaakov. Yaakov is the old father back at home. Yehuda is approaching him. Him is the Meforshim, the commentators give us a lot of different explanations of who the him is. But in the pshat, in the literal story, the him is Yosef. And he says, please, my Lord, let now your servant speak something into my Lord's ears, and let not your wrath be kindled against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. So first of all, you should know, and there's an idea of a way of understanding Chumash on many different levels. We can understand Chumash on the level of the actual story, just the literal story, the pshat, the literal story. And then there's the idea that when we learn Chumash, it's like we're walking into an orchard. And when we walk into the orchard, an orchard in Hebrew is called a pardes. So there are many levels in the orchard, many levels in studying Torah. The first level is pshat, means the literal level. Then there's the resh, remez, hints to other levels. The dalet drosh means we go to the level of midrash, and samach, samach is the level of sod, the Kabbalistic level, the secret level. So any pasuk in Torah we can look at on all these 4 levels. So the pshat level, the level of the story is Yehuda's coming to Yosef and he's saying, please, he's being, now Rashi says, the fact that he says to Pharaoh, I don't want you to get angry. Rashi says, does somebody want to read this Rashi, this one? Let not your wrath be kindled. What, does someone read it in English? By the way, I learned on Zoom, you can make your screen bigger, I think. Just anyway, if someone can read it.
And let your wrath not be kindled. From here, you learn that he spoke to him harshly.
So he spoke to him harshly. Yehuda is not being apologetic. He's not worried about what they're going to say about him in the newspapers tomorrow. He is standing up to this Egyptian guy. And even though this Egyptian guy is the one in charge of all the food, and even though it's a famine, Rashi says that he speaks very strongly to him. And he says, I don't want you to get angry. But let's take away Rashi for a minute. He says, I don't want you to be angry. And then he says, but look here. You asked, have you a father or a brother? And then we said we have a father, and we have a young boy, and that he's left alone. And then you asked for this, and then you asked for that, and then you did this, and then you did that, and then you asked if we could bring him. I mean, what is going on over here? Why are you putting us through this ringer? And it's then he says, you like Pharaoh. He says, you are like Pharaoh. And Rashi gives us a lot of things like Pharaoh. First of all, he says, you like Pharaoh in that you're important. But then he says, Pharaoh was punished. You know, when Pharaoh messed with Sarah, way back when, Pharaoh took Sarah into his court. If anybody remembers, he got leprosy. That wasn't so cool. And then he says also Pharaoh makes decrees and he doesn't fulfill them. And then the last Rashi here, he says about Pharaoh. If somebody wants to read the very, very last line in this Rashi here. So is Pharaoh. And then what does he say? If you provoke me, what does he say here?
I will kill you and your master.
I mean, Yehuda has a lot of guts here.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know he's talking to Yosef. He's talking to the second to Pharaoh in Egypt, the most powerful land, the second most powerful person. And he says, you're messing with me and I could kill you and your master. I mean, I don't know where Yehuda gets the guts to do that. And then what happens? And then he even says, it's not like you're trying, Rashi says, if he was trying to marry their sister, he could ask, do you have father? Do you have other siblings? If you were looking to marry us or we were looking to marry you, you could ask us all these questions about our family, our background. What's it your business that you want to know if we have a father, if we have other siblings? It's none of your business. And then he said, but you said, bring me this extra brother so I can see him. And we went and we brought the brother and we promised our father, our father didn't we told our father, and then in the Pasukim, it goes through the whole story. If we, we said to our father, we wouldn't be able to come unless we brought our youngest brother. And, he goes through the whole story and he says, all of these things, our father said he'd be so upset if anything happens and whatever. And now we're coming and you sort of, we'll go on to the next pasuk. You're causing us a lot of trouble. And then pasuk 32 is another good one. Pasuk 32. Let's read that with the Rashi because it's very important. Pasuk 32. Does somebody want to read in the English? Yaakova, looks like you're opening.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
For your servant assumed responsibility for the boy. Now, if you ask why I enter the tray more than my other brothers, I will reply. Enter the fray. I'm sorry, the fray. Not the tray.
No, don't read the Rashi. Just read the pasuk first, and then the Rashi.
Oh, can I read it in English?
Yeah.
Okay. For your servant assumed responsibility for the boy from my father, saying, if I do not bring him to you, I will have sinned against my father forever.
Okay, so first of all, even in English, this thing of assuming responsibility, what do those words evoke in us? That someone is saying that I took responsibility for the situation. What does that make us think?
Teshuva.
Teshuva for what?
For, like if you're taking responsibility, well, I think, he's making teshuva for what they did to Joseph in the first place. It's foreshadowing that. But I think the idea of taking responsibility is like on a deeper level, like for all of us, the message is that, we can take responsibility for our previous actions by doing teshuva.
Right. I mean, taking responsibility is a good thing. It's like what we always want everyone to do is to take responsibility. Take responsibility for your actions. Take responsibility for your mistakes. Stand up and take responsibility, for goodness sake, whatever the situation is. Have we seen Yehuda in any other situation taking responsibility for his actions?
Do you mean with Tamar?
Yes, with Tamar, right? That was an incredibly compromising situation. Yehuda, because Yehuda was involved and quite played a large part in the whole selling Yosef to Mitzrayim, to the Yishmaelim, and Yehuda ended up really not feeling so good around his family, and he moves out. He goes and he lives somewhere else. And where he's living somewhere else, he starts doing business with, foreigners, and he marries his sons off to this woman Tamar, and one son passes away because the son's not really doing the right thing, and another son passes away because he's also not doing the right thing, and then his responsibility is to give Tamar to the third son, because Tamar, I mean, not to speak about this in too much detail, but Tamar had married into the family. And the contract, when you sort of marry into the family, is that somehow that family, you're part of that family. If you're a childbearing woman and there are 3 sons in the family and 2 sons, your first husband dies and your second husband dies, from that family, the family owe you the 3rd son so you can get pregnant and be part of that family as an honored member of the family. So Yehuda didn't do that, and Tamar tricked him that he impregnated her, thinking she was a prostitute on the side of the road. I think most of you know the story. The impressive
It's
thing,
complicated. Yeah.
what it is that when Tamar becomes pregnant and people tell Yehuda, your daughter in-law has been playing the harlot and now she's pregnant, she must have been sleeping around. Tamar says, the person who impregnated me is the person who gave me as payment this staff and this ring. And she sends it to Yehuda. Now, in Hollywood, let's say, if there was a Hollywood character, or even in government, even in politics, if there was an important person who impregnated a prostitute. And then the prostitute, says, this is your child. In 99% of our not so moral public life of politicians and, paparazzi people, they would say, it's not my kid. I've got nothing to do with it. Yehuda took responsibility and he said, Tamar is more righteous than me. And he said, yes, she got pregnant from me. And he embarrassed himself in front of the whole community by saying, I slept with a prostitute. Turned out to be my daughter-in-law. I didn't know it was my daughter-in-law. And she did right. She's supposed to have a child from our family. But he could have not taken responsibility. Because Yehuda takes responsibility with Tamar, and he takes responsibility in this situation right now, Yehuda gets Malchus. What's Malchus?
Ship.
That were named, that Yehudim were named after him.
First of all, we're named after him. And second of all, Malchus is kingship. Yehuda becomes the leader of the family. From Yehuda is Malchus. We're going to have Mashiach is going to come from the tribe, I believe, of Yehuda. He has this claiming of responsibility is what defines Yehuda as the person who's got what it takes to lead the nation. And from him, we called Yehudim.
I know, but Bracha, the fact that he was with a prostitute isn't.
Well, he wasn't married anymore, and there's no rules against being with prostitutes in those times. I mean, he wasn't.
Okay.
His wife had passed away. He went and he was,
Oh, okay.
It
It seems a little bit.
he could
like
have kept it
wrong.
private, though. It was embarrassing to tell everyone that he had been with a prostitute, but it turned out it wasn't a prostitute, really. It turned out that those children become part of the messianic story. But it's the taking of responsibility that is the definitive thing. Okay, let's move
Right.
on because there's a lot of
Who are the
Back
children?
to,
Who are the children?
parrots and something else, but they become they're important people. They're part of the messianic lineage. If you want me to tell you who they are, we go back, it's parrots and it's in last week's Parsha. They were
Oh.
twins.
Oh,
The one is more famous than the other one. So one was parrots, and I can't remember right now.
okay,
Yeah, but okay, so
look it up.
anyway, so here he's taking responsibility. And Yaakov, did you want to read that Rashi of Pasuk 32, because it's very beautiful? If you're still there. Yeah, it is. You were going to read it before, and then I wanted
Yeah,
to
I'm
read it.
sorry. I thought I was unmuted.
Yeah.
For your servant assumed responsibility for the boy. Now, if you ask why I enter the fray more than my other brothers, I will reply that they are all standing from the outside without commitment, while I have bound myself with a strong bond to be an outcast in both worlds.
In both worlds, that means Yehuda is saying to his father, I will be punished in this world and the next world. Like, he really made a very strong promise, right? A very strong promise. Okay, so what happens next? So
They're up.
he comes up to Yosef like this and he says, I want to take responsibility. Let me stay instead of the boy. I'm stronger. I'm a much better candidate. If you want someone to stay here and, be a servant, with you, I can't tell my father that I messed this up. That's not going to happen. Now look at this. This is very, very meaningful.
It says-
Does somebody want to read Pasuk 1? They can read it in English.
Now Joseph could not bear all those standing beside him, and he called out, take everyone away from me. So no one stood with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers.
Right. Now this is Velo amad ish ito behit vada. There's the word dea, daas. Vada Yosef el Achiv. He made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, so the Egyptians heard and the house of Pharaoh heard. And then Pasuk 3, Linda, you want to read it? Verse 3.
Sure. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him because they were startled by his presence.
Keep reading.
Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they drew closer. And he said, I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt.
Okay, Rashi says, he says, come closer because he showed them that he had a bris. So they must have kind of come pretty close.
That's
Okay, carry on, carry on.
But now do not be sad, and let it not trouble you that you sold me here, for it was to preserve life that God sent me before you.
Okay, I'm just going to read another few psukim, or Linda's going to read them because she's reading them so beautifully. I want you to see how many times he mentions God. Okay, read Pasuk 6.
For already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest.
Keep reading.
And God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land and to preserve it for you for a great deliverance.
Okay, go and carry on reading.
And now you did not send me here, but God, and he made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord over all his household, and a ruler over the entire land of Egypt.
Good. So that's like, and then I think there's one more. Yeah, just read one more.
Hasten and go up to my father and say to him, so said your son Joseph, God has made me a lord over all the Egyptians. Come down to me, do not tarry.
So he mentions God 4 times, telling that story. He's telling his brothers, hey, don't worry, I'm not going to take revenge on you. It was all God. God, God, God. God did this. God orchestrated this. God made sure that I would be here so I could feed you. I don't have any grudges. I mean, Yosef is an amazing person. His family sold him. They didn't go look for him. He was there. He's 30 now. He was sold at the age of 17.
Wow.
Well, actually, he was 30 when he became viceroy. Now he's 37, I think. 37, 38, I don't know, 39 maybe. It's a long time.
Yeah.
God, God, God. So this is the amazingness of Yosef and the trust in God and the not bearing a grudge and all of that. So that's the story in the pshat level. There's not so much time, but if we go a little bit longer, I can share with you looking at this whole story on a more metaphysical, metaphorical kind of the level of metaphor of Yehuda stepping up to Yosef and what that means. And it's very beautiful. And Liz, excuse me, and Helene and Sori all listened to Diane in her class talking about the Sfat Emet and speaking about Yosef and Yehuda. And I just want to address that and a few different things because I have the Sfat Emet in English. I learn it in English, not in Hebrew. I don't have Diane's Hebrew skills, but there's some very beautiful ideas to just take out of it, and I just want to share them with you. So the first one is that so I can go back to sharing the screen because it is still, so let's go back to the beginning, to the first verse. So when it says that Yehuda approached him, Vayigash elav Yehuda, who is Yehuda approaching? So
Yosef. It's
the-
Yosef.
So the pshat, the literal story is that Yehuda is approaching Yosef. But on a more deep level, it's every Jew approaching God, an act of coming. Listen, Yehuda is in a moment where he has to stand up for truth. This is when the Pasha becomes interesting in a way, and it becomes timeless. Yehuda has to defend his younger brother. He made a promise to his father, but now Yehuda is representing every man or every yid or every neshama. And this Yehuda is a symbol of approaching someone in power, someone in authority. And in the story, that persona of authority is Yosef, but in the bigger picture, it's God, or it's one's own deeper self. And when Yehuda approaches him and he's stepping up, it's almost like Esther in coming up to King Achashverosh in the Purim story. She has to walk through Achashverosh's palace with all the idols, and they say she's coming to the king. It's not just Achashverosh, it's God himself. And this stepping up of Yehuda to Yosef, what ends up happening is because Yehuda stands in his truth and he's unafraid and he stands strong and he's unapologetic and he just speaks the truth, what ends up happening is what we see when it says that Yosef revealed himself to him, that Yosef couldn't contain himself anymore, right? What was the pasuk? Yosef couldn't contain himself anymore, and he revealed himself to the brothers.
It's so famous. It's like the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, on the metaphysical level, it's that when we come to God and we humble and we honest and we stand in our truth, in a way, God won't be able to help himself from revealing himself to us, or we will be able to access the part of ourselves which is godly, which is a piece of God. In other words, Yehuda is stepping up to Yosef, one level. He's stepping up to his higher self, his inner self, his innermost point, like the Sfat Emes calls it the Nakuda Tova, or the innermost point of truth. Rabbi Nachman calls it the Nakuda Tova. I think the Sfat Emes calls it something slightly different. He calls it he has another name for it. He calls it something else. It's the same thing. It's this inner part of one's own soul. And when Yehuda says to Yosef, I'll be your slave, take me, I will sacrifice my life, I will stay and be your servant. That's like us saying in front of God, I'm letting go of my ego, I'm letting go of all my preconceived notions, I just want to be there the way you need me to be there. That's when God reveals himself to us. That's when we access Torah or truth or our own, not to use other language from other cultures, but our own self-realization of our connection to truth or to the higher self or to the higher power. You understand where I'm going? It's like this moment of approaching
Revelation.
Revelation. It all comes from this word Vayigash, a love, that he steps up to him, Vayigash, a love, and then the response, the word that is the response is this aspect that can't hold itself back from revealing itself. It's that when it literally says in the pasuk, when that Yosef couldn't help himself. He couldn't help himself. It's pasuk 45. So let's just go back to that pasuk because it is very beautiful. Where is it? Pasuk 45. Where is the pasuk 45? No, it's here. Here, it's chapter 45. Now Yosef could not bear all those standing beside him, and he called out, "Take everyone away," and he wept aloud. And then he says, "Please come closer," and he says, "Va'ani Yosef avichem." I mean, it's very touching and it's very beautiful and it's very representative of this fact of, but this part of that he couldn't hold himself back. It's like in front of truth, darkness cannot stand. In front of truth, Yehuda will be victorious. In front of us standing for our truth, Hashem will reveal to us the secrets of Torah. In front of truth, the light will kind of be shared and illuminated. There's a pasuk from Tehillim, truth grows from the earth. God is even in a place of darkness. So when one negates himself and hands over his soul, truth will be revealed to him. Even darkness is not dark for you, it says in Tehillim. Yehuda's truthfulness and humility brought out the confession. And that's what brings us to this place of connection. That's really what we always wanting is this point of connection. So, and then there's another, it's also kind of like a, and then also from the Sfat Emet is that there's an inner point within each of us, within each thing. And that's also called Yosef. This is another, because it's like an added dimension. Yosef, when Rachel named Yosef, she said, God will add for me another. And the name of Yosef is about adding another. So Sfat Emes says that there's an inner point within all of us that's called Yosef, an extra something, an extra dimension. It's hidden because of our alienation from ourselves, our klipot, our sins, our something. But when we do what Yehuda did, when we humble ourselves, when we take the bull by the horns, when we stand up for truth, when we go in front of the Pharaoh's helper, the Yosef, the Egyptian bureaucrat or whatever, when we, he didn't know it was Yosef. When we do that, we elicit something very special. And the last piece, not to flood with too many things, is that each person is responsible for bringing their soul back to their father in a way that it's pure. Like when Yehuda says, I have to bring him back to my father, I have to bring, that we have to make sure that we come to Hashem and it's like bringing ourselves back to our father, that we all have to do the same thing what Yehuda did, to approach this moment of truth, standing in our truth, being honest, not being cowardly, standing for what we believe in and not taking, like he says to Yosef, what were you doing? What tricks were you playing? Making us go through all this stuff. Like, what's this all about? And Rashi says he spoke harshly. He wasn't intimidated. So I want to bless all of us, and I want to bless our people in this very challenging time, that we should be inspired by the example of Yehuda and stand for what we believe in and stand for our truth, and with humility, but with strength, stand for who we are in the world, stand for our light, stand for everything that we are, and that the Yosefs that seem to be just bureaucrats should turn out to really be agents that can help us. There's no such thing as darkness. All the darkness is only to get us to learn whatever lessons we have to learn so that it can fade away or not. It has no reality. All our enemies, they're not really going to last. We have to figure out how to be our authentic selves, and then they'll disappear. That's really
I want to ask you something. I'm thinking of a scenario that happened yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Yes.
Son of Elie Wiesel was, I think, in one of the transit centers, New Jersey, New York, something like that. And there was like a few hundred, Jew haters, the pro-Palestinians. And he had wrapped himself, people are wrapping themselves in the flag, in the Israeli flag. And of course, he did that. And of course, the idiots don't like it. And a police officer came over. This is bugging me so much. A police officer came over and instead, and told Elie Wiesel's son to take it off because it's antagonizing those people. And Elie Wiesel's son was compliant. He did it. And I'm thinking, that's not brave. I'm not judging him, but the whole thing is so crazy because what is this policeman doing? Personally, I think because he doesn't want to have to deal with a difficult situation. He is saying, let's back down from these violent criminals who he should be, to me, he should be arresting them, right? And instead, he's telling the Jew, the innocent victim of these criminals, that he should take off, he shouldn't antagonize, he should take off this.
I totally agree with you. This is a microcosm for the macrocosm, right? The whole world is telling Israel to go for a ceasefire or this or that. They should be telling Hamas to release the hostages and surrender because they're evil terrorist group. But this feeling that you've got now, that is exactly the state. Every single thing about what's going on in the world now is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It's so absurd that the whole world is against us. We're trying so hard to be righteous, and we are righteous. And there's no army in the world who's more careful not to do, wrong things. It is completely crazy. So what is the root of it? What is the spiritual root of it? We can get angry and we can, take umbrage, but there's something going on in the world that we have to step up internally. And
Yes.
I see that Helen or Helene?
Helene, because I have to go soon, and not to give an answer, but just to respond that one of the things that my rabbi said when he gave a Devar Torah last week was that for all the insanity, that what we can do is do insane mitzvot. Like use that same energy to just do what's beyond our understanding. Like you may say that I don't understand this particular mitzvah. It doesn't make sense for me to do it. Do it anyway.
There's something that we are being called upon. Maybe it's as simple. We have to unify. We have to stop the division as a people. We have to really clean up a lot of our own internal reality. Even in the Chumash, when the people were separated, they were attacked. When they came together, they weren't. They were strong. They were punished when they did bad things and they weren't united, and they did bad things and they were united and they weren't punished. That's in Chumash. So the first thing is we have to take care of our unity. And the second thing is that, the Lubavitcher Rebbe has, Yossi Jacobson just gave a class. It's not very long, but he said that he was a child, I guess from 15, he was listening to the Rebbe speaking on Shabbos, and Yossi Jacobson was one of the people who would remember what the Rebbe said and after Shabbos write it down. And he said for years and years and years and years and years, every single time the Rebbe spoke, he spoke about all the mistakes that Israel was making and giving back land, trading land for peace, not standing up for our values, our boundaries, our values, our own inherent right to the land. the more that we capitulate to public opinion, the more we endanger ourselves, and the more people hate us, and the more people kill us. And when we learn to stop doing that, to say, these are our boundaries, this is our Torah, this is our light, this is our life, this is what we believe in, this is Yehuda stepping up to, the power, Vayigash, I love. When we start doing that, they will stop doing what they do. But we so compromised in our own belief, in our own identity, that the more we capitulate, I mean, giving back Gush Katif I was already grown up and alive and conscious. I had stickers, I had books, I had posters, I had yellow streamers, I mean, orange. That was insane. It was self-hating, ridiculous capitulation to Western opinion. That is what has to stop. That's where we have to work. It's our own internal lack of confidence in who we are and what we've been given and what our job is supposed to be. And I feel like that's what we have to pray for. And that's what Mashiach is. But this is supposed to be a waking up call. And I think a lot of things. Enjoy your date, Karina. Shalom.
Helene, wait, you have to tell, wait, Helene.
Yeah,
you have to tell everyone who you are.
Who's Helene?
Helene.
I did before you got on.
Oh, I was late.
Yeah. I did
Okay.
before I got on.
I wasn't on either.
Yeah, Helene is sorry, you tell us.
Okay,
Helene, Liz and I are sisters, and Helene is our cousin. And Liz kidnapped Helene tonight to bring her.
No, she didn't kidnap me. She gave me a gift.
Yes.
So thank you for the gift. I have to run. I have a date.
Okay, bye. Good
We all have
night.
to run. Officially, the class ends at 9:00, so we really should end. But anyway, it is infuriating, Linda. We have to stop doing things that compromise our identity and our integrity. And
he needed to say that to the police officer. He needed to say,
I know.
I'm not committing a crime by wrapping myself in this flag.
Did you see that Shaliach's son in Harvard or Yale? There was a huge Palestinian demonstration,
Rally.
and he wrapped himself in an Israeli flag. He was wearing tefillin, college student, and he just kept on saying, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. And there were Palestinians all around him in their thing.
Yes, he was on the stairs.
Sarah Esther Crisp.
Yeah, Sarah Esther Crisp's son. It was so amazing. So that in a way, like I feel like, somehow Yehuda doing what he did with Yosef. Because really,
but Linda, you know what? I mean, not Linda. It's so provocative to, I mean, what would happen to this man if he started, I'm not trying to be devil's advocate. I'm saying, or in Israel, if they didn't get back the land, first of all, the government is more secular and not, and capitulating. I mean, they're afraid of war. They don't want
no, but the Rebbe said,
war with the other countries around.
The Rebbe said that the more capitulations, the more danger, the more people die. The more you're strong and you defend your boundaries and your right to the land, the less people will die and the more secure you'll be. And it's the same thing we learned on Tisha B'Av. We had a learning all together. I never knew. They had enough food in the Yerushalayim for 37 years when they were sieged by the Romans. And Jewish zealots burnt the food because they were against, there was some political thing and they didn't.
Were they progressives?
They were zealots and they felt like they wanted to force. I remember that there was food and that the zealots burnt the food storages, but I can't remember the political reasons why. But they didn't like that the people would handle the siege. They wanted to force a confrontation, and they burnt their own food and put our people to such. We do the worst things to ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And the story with Israel, if we wouldn't have given back in Lebanon, we won. We won land in Lebanon, we withdrew. Gush Katif, we had it, we withdrew. The West Bank, we withdrew. We have to stop
It's ridiculous.
betraying our own interests.
That's
And
right.
then that's really, so anyway, so Yehuda stood up, he went, and by the way, they were in a very compromised position. They were strangers, they were in Egypt, they were just a band of, family members. Their son, their brother had been caught, looking like he had stolen something, but Yehuda was like, I'm standing up for truth. I'm not cowering. And then there was a breakthrough. That's what we need to be inspired by.
I agree.
So anyway, thank you for listening. We went over time.
Thank
We
you.
should have peace in our time,
Yeah,
but
amen.
only through strength, not through capitulation.
Absolutely.
Amen.
There's no
Right.
peace in capitulation.
All the best. Shabbat
Okay, thank
shalom.
you. Shabbat
Bye,
shalom.
Gazon.
Thank you, Bracha.
Okay.
Shabbat
Bracha,
shalom.
thank you.
Shalom.
Thanks a million.
So much.
You're welcome. You're
It
welcome.
was great. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
night.
It's Liz. Good night, Liz, if you're not sleeping already. Okay.